All right, we will bring this regular meeting to order, starting with a roll call.
Commissioner Dukes. Here. Commissioner Freitas.
Here.
Commissioner Meyer.
Here.
Commissioner Kraft.
Here.
And Commissioner Lazar is not with us yet, but we are expecting him.
All right, salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll move to the oath of office.
Okay, we have two, Chairwoman Mayer and Planning Commissioner Freitas, and I'm going to read it and do it at the same time. And if you both could say your name not at the same time after I say I, and then say I do at the end. So I,
Meredith Mayer,
Dolores Freitas,
do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California and the Charter of the City of Eureka, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter in the capacity of Commissioner for the Planning Commission of the City of Eureka.
I do.
yes,
Excellent.
thank you, I do.
Great. I'll get your signatures at the end of the meeting.
Thank you. We'll move to election of officers.
Are the current chair and vice chair interested in retaining their positions?
I'm fine to stay, but I'm fine to move too.
Ditto.
I have no interest in taking on a more active role at this time.
Likewise. All right.
I make a motion to have Chair Mayer be chair and vice chair. Oh my God, Kraft. Sorry, Michael. Vice Chair Kraft remain vice chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Well, thank you. Michael and I are honored to continue our roles. We hold these roles in another organization as well, so reversed. Approval of minutes for the December 10th meeting.
As this is where I add value in the meetings I'm in, I did read the minutes and I will move to approve them.
Second.
Oh.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving right along, we will move to oral communications, which would allow opportunity for anyone to speak to anything not on the agenda this evening. I'm assuming there's no one on Zoom, but I can't see the top. Does staff have anything they'd like to add? That's great. All right, we'll close oral communications. I don't need to open and close these since there's nothing here. Great. So we'll move all the way down to new business, SB 707 updates to the Brown Act.
This is our city attorney. I don't know, Greg, your official title. Deputy Greg Holtz will be presenting via Zoom. He's not online. Oh no, we lost him. Okay. Well, I guess we can move this to next time. We can just move to the next agenda. I thought I saw Bob.
I thought I saw Bob too.
Raylene, we invited them, right?
both to the calendar appointment, and I did send them both the agenda also with the information on it.
The meeting was canceled? Oh, for some reason, but he's gonna try calling him now, so maybe we'll move him.
Okay. Do I need to do anything formal to move that down? Okay.
Yeah, just
We'll-
say state you're moving it. It's
we'll-
at your discretion to move stuff around on the agenda.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So we'll move that to after. So we'll move to 2026 Inland Zoning Code update.
Okay. I tried to break the information up evenly and I failed. So this one's more information than last time, and I apologize. This time we have a lot of the design related code updates, which I explained in the memo that was attached to your agenda. So my consultant, Ben Noble, is here to help field questions. He's on Zoom. Okay. I think Derek's ready. The first slide. Are we there? Can I touch it? Is just to remind us that we're talking about the inland zoning code, but that our hope is to use all this in our coastal zoning code update, which I plan to turn to in March after, fingers crossed, this inland code update is adopted. So I'm going to start. This is different order than how it was in your agenda packet. I'm going to just hit up all the design related stuff first, and then let Ben go if he wants for the rest of it. Okay, so changes to design review for new buildings. Under the proposed changes, discretionary design review at a notice public hearing would no longer be required. We would just have design review done by staff administratively based on the objective code standards. This presents an issue that we no longer have notice, so we built in this neighborhood information meeting component where if you have a large project, you need to, as part of your application submittal, have demonstrated that you hosted a neighborhood meeting. Just like last time, interrupt if you have any thoughts. That was the only piece of this I had on neighborhood meeting, if anybody has comments on that.
How do you envision you would provide the like a radius from the site to the applicant, and then they would send mailed notices?
Correct. It requires them to notice neighbors within 300 feet, just like we would, I believe.
Right, ahead of a hearing.
It's
Is it-
in 408 at the end. It says, and then Derek, can Ben unmute himself? Yes, he should be able to. Okay, cool. Yeah, notify property owners and residents within a radius of 300 feet of the exterior boundaries of the subject property.
Would there be a requirement to notify the department when the meeting was being held? Is that in there?
Yeah, we added in C, mailing notice to the City of Eureka Development Services Department too.
I guess I will ask one question. I want to check an assumption that our expectation is that somebody developing a larger project would pay attention to what they hear, take in the information, be responsive as practical, but they're not required to be responsive. Is that?
Yeah, that is
accurate?
correct. And we've done neighborhood meetings on a number of projects just voluntarily. And they definitely, when it's the applicant presenting and responding, they feel more, I've noticed they are more responsive, to the people that they're talking with when they have to talk
That's
one-on-one and it's not this public hearing scenario.
That's good. Thank you.
The other nice thing about it is that people can ask any questions, because right now they're getting frustrated that were like, no, this is just design review. We're only talking about the aesthetics of the street facing facade. And people are like, but I want to talk about this other thing, you know? And so this would give them a forum to ask questions and make comments on any aspect of the project. And the person has to respond to them.
What do you think about like the response to comments being like a part of the submittal? I don't know if that's necessary, you know, but it is. I don't think you need to take minutes of the meeting, but on the other hand, and it's not going to be discretionary, right? Like this is, so it's really voluntary, but it does provide a way of showing that the applicant considered the comments, even if they didn't choose to like integrate them. And maybe it gives staff the opportunity to go, you know, you could do that without requiring any additional submittals, or if you do that, you do qualify for this, you know, maybe something might spring from it, you know, as the, because
Yeah,
or
we
maybe it would identify something for like a public investment of city monies for an intersection that's problematic, or infrastructure that needs upgrade, or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, we definitely were on the fence about that. We put it in to the neighborhood meeting requirement for wireless facilities, because in that case, there's a conditional use permit afterwards, so we can respond to comments. But I see your point. It's kind of like CEQA, environmental documents, people comment and the applicant has to respond. They don't actually have to make any changes. They just have to respond.
Right. It might be too onerous, especially since we're talking about something that should otherwise be principally permitted. This is, I would think, right? My read of it was that it provides an opportunity for low-hanging fruit that the developer might not ever even consider, or idiosyncrasies of a site or a location, you know, that would be off their radar to be addressed ahead of time instead of, you know, in reaction, but not to extract any kinds of concessions by a developer, you know.
We after, I think the I Street project came to you, or was that the H Street project that came to you?
I Street did.
Or it was a 7-plex on H or I.
I think it was yeah.
We had a meeting with the neighbors afterwards, and the applicant showed up, and they were concerned about, for instance, like construction happening before 8 a.m. And the applicant was assured them that they would, you know, there was easy concessions for them to make.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to talk it through, but I think you guys are fine with, you know, it would be more, I don't think there'd be a whole lot of value, but.
Can you orient to the section that has what is required? Because I know there is a list of what, you know, like emails and stuff, right?
It's much longer for wireless facilities than just for the neighborhood meeting, is in 408-10, which is page 117 in the agenda packet.
Okay, great.
But for in this case, we just have them submitting to us a copy of the notice mailed and posted, the mailing list, and a copy of the information presented and made available at the meeting. We don't have number 4, like respond to the comments in writing.
Okay.
And also staff would be have an opportunity to attend, so.
I'm assuming it'll probably be hosted here and will be part of it, which has happened in the past with large projects.
Right. Okay.
Now we have all these we have very detailed code standards, and so it'll come up during review of building permits that we disagree with the applicant on interpretation of some of these code standards. And so we have a provision in the code that allows us to elevate issues of interpretation. So we don't awkwardly have to like deny a building permit and have it appealed. We can just elevate it to planning commission and have you all make the final decision on interpretation of the code standard. And applicants who can't or don't want to follow all the rules, they can request discretionary design review with the design review committee. And the finding is that either they have a unique condition or they have a superior design, and that they meet the intent statements for that section of the code.
And to be clear, you've dissolved the design review committee. Now we are the design review committee.
No, the design review committee it's not dissolved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't there discussion about it being dissolved, but that didn't, so now it's not.
That's not what we're proposing.
Okay.
So now, though, if I'm understanding right, because this was kind of news to me too, they would be able to kind of guide what the standards are going to be, but they would only see projects that don't meet the objective standards.
Which is how we do things with sign design review now. If people comply, if the project complies with the sign standards, they get an administrative sign permit from staff. If they want a giant IHOP sign, then they have to come in for a creative sign permit with the design review committee and prove that they're truly creative.
And that's pretty rare. That's science, so maybe it's a different beast, but hopefully there wouldn't be that many coming.
I think that right now, design review committee meets twice a month. I think if this passes, I would suggest they meet less.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense to me. So we would not be taking on their duties, to be
No,
clear.
you would still be the appeal body for the design review committee.
Okay.
Or if there were other permits required.
Or if there's other permits required, they all come to you at once.
Okay.
So just background on our code, there's a lot of different ways to deviate from standards, in addition to this new discretionary design review provision. And one thing that you'll see as you review the code update is we have these things called administrative adjustments, and they're particular to particular standards where we're like, oh, there's something that comes up here. Like, for instance, we have a fence requirement that properties on Broadway, they're adjacent technically to residential properties above them. And so they would technically have to put in a fence to screen their property from the adjacent residential. But because of topographic differences, it doesn't make sense. So we added an administrative adjustment for topographic reasons. So it's like and then if you're interested, we could cover all the different ways you can do deviations, but there's different procedural levels and there's different reasons you can get different deviations.
I think generally I'm super supportive of staff's ability to use discretion for minor things. It seems like it comes up a lot, at least in the work that I do, where it's like, this is completely reasonable. Is there a way to avoid, extra time and money for the applicant? So I think that's going to be really helpful.
One overarching change in all these design review sections or design standard sections is that right now we have a bunch of standards that apply to street-facing facades. But as we did the waterfront specific plan, we were thinking about facing the boardwalk or facing a plaza. And so we changed it from street-facing to public-facing building facades. But we still exempt alleys from this. They're not considered public-facing building facades, except if it's like alley open space, which we have on Clark Plaza, where there's an alley and then there's the Clark Plaza. All right, there's a bunch of standards that are working well in our current code that we retained. Having primary entrances face the street for at least if they're individual entrances for tenants, then the tenant space that's fronting the street has to have a entrance and it has to connect to the street sidewalk. Blank walls, this is huge. Before we had this standard, we got blank walls all the time in Eureka. Equivalent degree on all street-facing sides. This project, it came in with just the two different sidings on the short side. And we use this standard to push them to put more visual interest on the eye-facing side. And then prohibited materials, we have a cap on the use of stucco. I'm looking at you all every time, just in case you have comments on anything. Those are all existing.
No, I was just distracted. Should we just table that so he doesn't have to stay all night
We're going to table it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Front-loaded garages, that's a current standard. It's being these are standards that are current that we're just expanding the applicability of. So right now it's just applies to multifamily and residential zoning districts. Now it's going to apply to multifamily in any zoning district. Minimum 12-foot ground floor ceiling height. That for new buildings facing commercial building, facing a public facing part of the building. Right now it just applies in pedestrian focused frontages, which are portions of downtown west, and Henderson Center. Now it'll apply in all mixed use and residential zoning districts for commercial. And then minimum ground floor transparency. It was just PFFs. Now it's going to be any mixed use or residential. And then we also added a new 20% minimum for residential buildings transparency ground floor. This is based on comments from the Planning Commission when we were talking during the waterfront specific plan about is it the 2nd Street Promenade that goes to the Carson Mansion? And I was hearing it was more about building form than use, and making sure the buildings really were like active. New buildings really like activated the street.
Quick, narrow question on the garage percentage. Is that square footage of the frontage or linear?
Linear. Ben is nodding. Okay. Then some standards that existed, we strengthened. Or we're proposing to strengthen. So we wanted to just add more objective clarification about entrance design options. Right now we say entrances have to be visually prominent, but a lot of people just see like, oh, recessed entrance is an option, and they just put in a recessed entrance that isn't visually prominent. So we're trying to strengthen that. And then for commercial and shared entrances for multiple units, we have this new separate standard for weather protection. Although if you put in a porch, you get credit for both. We have a standard right now that's really subjective that just says like use durable materials. So we fleshed that out, what that means. And then right now we have a list of architectural features, and a project has to hit at least 2 of them. And we're dividing it up now into, you have to pick 2 architectural features you have to hit 2 facade articulation features and 1 roof design feature. What we've noticed is a lot of people count roof form variation. I blame the planners, like a triangle gets counted as roof form variation, and then
Pitched roof.
and then window trim right now is like there's no width on it, so a lot of people just put a line around a window and count window trim. So we strengthen that. And so these are all the facade articulation options. The underlined ones are newly proposed. I did get a comment that fake shutters are upsetting to people. I don't know how you all feel.
They're optional though, right?
They're optional,
So
yeah.
maybe some people are not upset.
I'm not seeing any strong feelings. Okay. Roof design. We got a comment from CRTP concerned about solar. There's options that allow for flat roofs. You just need a strong band around the top of your building.
So some type of like freeze or whatever, some separation between the siding materials and the upper part of the wall or whatever.
Ben, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so in the code, what we say is a parapet, a raised edge, or a 3-dimensional architectural band that extends along the full length the full length of the roof line. Just so some sort of feature that sort of visually identifies the top of the building. Um, uh, that's the language that we've used.
So a cornice or a frieze would
Yes.
qualify.
Oh, Steve,
Oh, sorry, I'm too far away.
you get really quiet when I play the meetings back.
I'm also like got a head cold, so I'm trying not to talk too hard. Yeah, so a cornice or a frieze would both be elements that would
Correct.
work. Okay.
And then we have a bunch of new standards, which I'm going to go through. First, we have new building massing standards. The length of a building measured parallel to the public-facing building facade shall not exceed 300 feet. And every 150 feet, you need a major massing break. And I've heard concern about this, that this could potentially, because our old buildings aren't like, they don't have major massing breaks, but I went through the city, and really any building that's going to be built on a traditional street block is not going to face either of these standards. I tried, this one was the longest one I could find. It was 145 feet on one side, and it still is under 150. So this is really just going to affect our large commercial big box stores off the street grid. And then there's a new standard that you need a minimum number of entrances on your facade.
I was curious about this one. Like, what is the thought process for why this would make sense to apply for all new construction?
This building was a inspiration, I think, in part for it. Just thinking, Ben, you want to have thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. So I think that the intent of these entry requirements is to support a pedestrian-friendly environment and activity on the street. And one of the things that we found when looking at recent development in Eureka and other places is that suffers when you have building frontages that don't have an entrance, where the facade is more than, say, 50 feet in length. And so this development in particular, we think illustrates that issue. So we included this new standard that if you have a building facade greater than 50 feet that's facing public place, that you need to have at least one entrance, and the longer your facade is, the more entrances that you need to have. And so if you compare these two sides of the building, the side with the entrances has is much more conducive to pedestrian activity, more so than the one without the entrances.
Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling about it, but this one did seem like maybe in some cases a bit overly prescriptive, but I guess like more egress is good. So it's not terrible. For the previous slide too, I had a question about, you said it would mostly only come up in large commercial settings. So like a Costco or something, right? So,
Yeah.
Like in that example, if they say we want a building longer than 300 feet and we don't want a bunch of entrances, they would just have to go to design review committee and make their case. And it'd be kind of a unique situation where a building would be that large. Is that kind of what we're expecting?
Yes.
Okay.
Any thoughts?
I think that it seems like you have already done the work to think through like how common would this actually be given our existing kind of like development pattern, and it would be pretty rare. And if Costco has to go through a discretionary process, like they have the money to do that, whatever. I guess that's fine. But that's the kind of applicant we'd be catching in that net that would otherwise probably, I'm assuming, kind of just sail through.
Yeah.
Or what would there be an existing process that they would trigger?
Sorry, what?
For Costco, if they want, it's just the example of Costco.
Yeah,
If they wanted
they
to do
would-
a new addition, would they currently have to go to design review?
Yes.
Okay, so it would be similar to what we already have then.
Yeah.
Okay.
On this, I do like what we're balancing here. When I go to visit my family in the Inland Empire of Southern California, it is warehouse central, and it's just thousands of feet of unbroken white wall in so many places. Now, that's not a present threat around here, but we certainly don't want to be that. So I do think that some nice thinking ahead of time is helpful. I like what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, I guess I mean, short of engineering some escape valves, other than the discretionary design review process, like I think the Costco site is a good example of a place where having a pedestrian friendly frontage is not so critical. I mean, the location itself is,
Well, technically, Costco's in the industrial zone. So this only applies in residential and mixed use zones. So Costco would not be subject to this standard, now that I think about it. I mean, it's also in the coastal zone, but we are planning on adopting these same standards in the coastal zone.
So there's some places in the community, perhaps, where that's not an essential goal in that area. Like maybe in the Bridge district or something, there could be some places.
Yeah, originally we were like, just do whatever you want on Broadway, and we didn't even require design standards to be met, and we didn't have design review. And then the council was like, no, it's our gateway. We want to make it nice. That's all people see of Eureka. And so they shifted and started to care about that.
Yeah. So I mean, short of, like I say, kind of identifying these areas where we'd provide a escape for certain locations, I think that I'm not necessarily against it. There's a pathway. I do want to kind of get back to, like, really everything would be subject to design review currently without the revisions we're proposing, right? Like design review catches everything.
Right now it's any building,
Any new primary building over 500 square feet, and then any building additions where you're increasing the floor area by 30% or more.
And certainly any new structure.
yes.
Yeah. So it's like we're making a fundamental shift, and to do that, where we're like eliminating a discretionary process for applicants, we're trying to bake in all these prescriptive standards, which hopefully aren't too, frustrating for people designing. Because I am sensitive to the comments we received from DJ Cleek, and then on the other hand, from Robert Maxon, kind of polar opposite. But I guess what I would say as we go through this is, what are kind of in staff's mind the most essential things that we need a backstop on, and what are the things that are sort of more marginal, take it or leave it?
Yeah.
Because those would be the ones I'd want to focus the most attention on.
Sure.
Because I was kind of a little bit overwhelmed in considering the two different camps of comments we were receiving.
It depends on what you care about too, but I'll do my best to flag things. Okay. I think DJ was missing the trade-off that this is allowing you not to have to go through a discretionary process, which is huge because the discretionary process triggers CEQA too. It's a big deal and can mean a lot more money and time and frustration. And most developers are happy with a few more objective standards in lieu of a discretionary process.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I just, anything that would potentially make new design challenges that are particularly onerous.
Yeah, the building massing and the entrances is gonna make it harder to build big box stores. So how much you care about making it easy or hard for that is how much you want to support or push back on these standards.
I guess they could always go in the mall if they are a big box store, so maybe it's a good way to redirect that energy.
I mean, Target's just a little bit over 300 feet with their like garden center. So they would just need a major massing break. They wouldn't need to, they could have their whole building.
Yeah, because we don't have a size like a 10,000 square foot trigger or anything like that. If you design the fenestration and correctly, it doesn't matter the overall footprint.
No, we don't have a maximum size limit on commercial space. You just have to creatively break up your building.
Well, we do these code updates fairly regularly, so as we see the friction emerge, we can always
Too. That's a good point too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the veterans housing across from the co-op. Could you go back to that slide? Yeah. I don't know the interior of this building specifically, but I know that there are often communal areas inside the main entrance, and I'm wondering if you required another entrance on the what is that, C Street, B Street, whatever it is, the side street. If you required another entrance there, would that entail more security safeguards?
Yeah.
Could it be just like an exit instead of an entrance? Or I'm wondering how much this is going to increase the costs for the developer in terms of staffing and extra public support type stuff inside the main entrance.
Yeah, that is a legitimate concern because with large multifamily projects with just one entrance,
I can see the need for more egress. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a safety situation.
I'm not worried about affordable housing projects because they could easily get a density bonus concession.
Got it. Okay.
Because it would hurt it's very clearly would take away some of their residential space.
Got it. Okay.
But if this was a market rate, that could be a concern.
Okay.
Okay, not lukewarm on this building entrance thing.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna raise any issue with it. I was just curious to hear more about what the intent was of the standard.
I like it. I think it's great because it does exactly what you're saying, is that it gets more people moving around on these streets. And I think the more people moving around, especially in these areas, it increases safety, it increases activity, it increases the business that's happening down there. So I'm more than lukewarm.
Okay, we added additional standards if you're proposing a front-loaded garage that's street-facing, serving individual units. They have to pick a design option, and in this case, it's to make it less visually prominent. So opposite of the entrance standards. And then we also added standards for parking garages, just vision boarding a future parking garage. All right, moving on. We also added, we have these parking placement standards that push buildings towards the corner, and we added you have to pick out of these options for your to accentuate your corner. And I love a corner treatment, but really like this Starbucks complies because they have a sign at their corner. So it doesn't need to be a whole thing. It could be somewhat simple to accentuate your corner. And then we added a minimum window accentuation requirement. And then the optional one, it requires you to really put in some trim. Okay. Anything else on building design standards?
A process question. I attended, as you know, Director Kenya and I attended the community forum that was here on this topic. And, probably 30 out of 40 people in the room and everybody on Zoom was really interactive, good thoughts. I think the voting, I was surprised at some of the things that were lower temperature, pleasantly
Right.
surprised. So how much of that has either reinforced or changed what you've decided to do and what you're presenting tonight?
Oh, a lot. Like the question about the massing led me to really like drill down on all these buildings in Old Town and make sure we weren't doing something that was overly restrictive. That's the first example that floats into my mind.
And just want to salute Councilmember Moulton and staff. That was a really good session. Now I said 38 out of 40. One guy didn't ask any questions, just listened, and one person wanted to hijack the meeting for something else. But other than that, it was awesome.
That's an average community meeting. Yeah, and we posted those results. We have a 2026 Inland Zoning Code update webpage, and we have those results on there. And I'm definitely going to use Mentimeter again. That was fun to get instant polling. I should use it with you guys. Figure out who loves it and who's lukewarm. Okay, new large site development standards. These apply, again, just in residential and mixed-use zoning districts when there's a development area of 1.5 acres or more. And they apply, a lot of the trigger here is you have a vacant site you're developing or you're redeveloping 75% or more of the floor area. And our inspiration here was the Jacobs site. We were thinking about that. We don't currently have large site development standards at all. It's rare in Eureka to have a large site develop or redevelop, but if it does happen, it really affects how things feel.
Are there any other properties that immediately come to mind besides the school that would be
The mall,
yeah.
Kmart, although there's no street on the other side that you would need to like connect to. I think about the movie theater after the one in McKinleyville closed. Balloon track. Okay.
Good list.
These standards, I'm not gonna. I don't have other slides for. There's new internal circulation standards on these large sites, and then for sites that are 3 acres or more, we added an open space standard. We don't have open space requirements on small sites, and that's been huge for us for getting redevelopment. In the coastal zone, we still do, and it's per unit, and it prevents us from getting reuse of vacant sites and more residential units. It's a huge constraint. So it was like, not having it has been really huge, but if you have a site like the Bayshore Mall, you can accommodate an open space that's, All right, so if a proposed project site's boundary abuts developed lands, new streets intersecting the boundary align and connect with adjoining streets. Same with alleys, since we have this great network of alleys in Eureka. And your maximum block length is 300 feet. So if you have a site that's longer than 300 feet and you come in to develop it, you'd have to add a street. And it could be a full-on street or it could be a pedestrian path. I hear CRTP to say that it should also accommodate bicycles. It has a minimum width of 15 feet.
What about Colin's comments about the 4-foot, 5-foot sidewalk?
I don't want to step on engineering's toes. They have all these the driveways was stepping on their toes, and they already have driveway standards. And I pushed into engineering's realm a little bit with this code update, but they set those standards, and public improvement requirements are a different portion of the code.
I wonder if we could maybe float it forward as a gentle recommendation to consider or something like that. I mean, I would be willing to do that and not hold up any process because of it if there was interest from the commission on emphasizing that for engineering to consider it.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately city council's purview to do what they want, but I just don't feel like the zoning code is the appropriate place for that. We already have a separate section of the code about streets.
Is there any discretionary permit trigger in the large site development standards?
No.
Is your goal for sidewalks to be larger?
No, I mean, I just was curious because there seemed to be, a disagreement with where it would be relevant at all, and only on this kind of scenario could I imagine there being new sidewalks as part of a development because you're building new streets or something like that. But in most cases, you're redeveloping adjacent to an existing sidewalk. But no, it's more just, I remember taking particular note during the Jacobs thing that, doing a development, well, of course it was ballot box zoning, but like not having the ability to require a developer to make contributions to the overall infrastructure and impacts that would be affecting adjacent infrastructure was troubling to me to have something like that emerge with very little accountability. Now that was in most part because they were trying to design the zoning to just have it sail through and not be subject to any discretion. But similarly, it would just be nice to, in cases of a certain magnitude, have the ability to require more than what would otherwise just be prescriptively required under the code or the plan. But I think that's a slippery slope. We want to facilitate development, obviously, and not stymie it by subjecting it to, long, drawn-out, uncertain processes. So
Ultimately, with large sites, there's a likelihood that they're going to have to go through a discretionary process for a lot line adjustment subdivision situations.
a lot line adjustment really, like,
No, you're right. Lot line adjustment would be ministerial, but if they had to subdivide,
That can be called upon by the planning commission.
so,
yeah. Anyways, I think this is a good starting point. We should have standards for sites like this. It gets at least the ability to get design, taken into account beyond just whatever the developer figures on a site, whether it's redevelopment or new development.
okay, this one's controversial. We were thinking about the Jacob site and how there's, across the street from these homes that are detached. And Ben had this great example from Berkeley of a site that got redeveloped across the street from single family homes. And they, in the first little bit of facing the street, they kept it shorter and made it individual townhomes, and it feels in line with the neighborhood, even though there's this like gigantic development right behind it. Okay. That's all for large site development, unless anybody had any comments.
I mean, in many of these cases, they're going to be subject to a plan amendment or zone reclassification if they wanted to do like residential at Jacobs, or the Kmart was redeveloped into a residential from commercial, or probably some amount of.
Jacobs is zoned public, so they would have to go through a zoning. But most of the sites on Broadway are zoned mixed use, and they allow residential by right. We allow residential without a use permit everywhere in mixed use and residential zoning districts. Okay.
Oh, what about the neighborhood meeting concept?
What about it?
Is it in here? I mean, it seems like a good candidate.
Yeah. So if they're building a structure 20,000 square feet or greater, they would have to have a neighborhood meeting.
Okay. But it would be invoked from a different area of the code.
It's in section 408 in permit procedures. It says if it's two things. It's if you're building something 20,000 square feet or greater and you're not otherwise subject to a discretionary process, then you have to have the neighborhood meeting. So if otherwise there would be no notice and transparency, then you have to do it.
Right.
But I will think through this thought that maybe does there need to be some sort of cross-reference here? I'll think about it. Okay. General standards. We already have this standard that you have to screen adjacent to residential with a 6-foot high fence if you're right next to it. And we have this standard that there's additional upper story step backs required adjacent to residential. But right now, they only apply when you're a parcel in the mixed use zoning district and you're abutting a parcel in the residential zoning district. And so we have these, because the mixed use zoning districts often have 0 setbacks. You can build 2 commercial buildings and they can share a wall, right? So this is like, okay, the idea of it was, if you're next to residential, then you need 5 for the first floor, 10 for the second, 15 for the third. And the problem is a lot of our mixed use zoning districts are full of single family homes. So it leads to this weird application where a single family home is having to build a fence next to something larger than it just because it's in a residential zoning district. I mean, it's in a mixed use district and it's next to a residential zoning district. So we changed it to be, instead of zoning district based, use based. So if you're a parcel in the mixed use or industrial district and you're proposing a non-residential use, and you adjoin a lot occupied by a residential use, then you build a 6-foot tall fence. And then for the upper floor step backs, if you're in the residential or mixed use zoning districts and you adjoin a lot occupied by a single family home and you're a use other than a single family home, so multifamily, mixed use, commercial, then you do the step backs. And honestly, the shading of the new multifamily housing seems to be the biggest issue that comes up when we're reviewing the design. But step backs do reduce your building footprint. I mean, envelope. So it's a trade-off. And then we added this new side building wall standard that applies similarly to the step backs, that you just need to break up your side wall a bit if you're within 15 feet of the interior side lot line. So I don't know if this came to you all, but we did the Housing Authority came for their Clark and C senior housing redevelopment. They were a big multifamily next to a single family, but they were 20 feet from the lot line. So they wouldn't have had to do this. All right, trash, recycling, organics enclosure. We already have a standard. This thing comes up where if people aren't repaving or putting in new pavement, they don't trigger the stormwater standards. And so they argue they don't have to cover their trash enclosure. So we're just clarifying that you have to cover your trash enclosure even if you don't otherwise trigger stormwater MS4 stuff. Mechanical equipment screening, we moved it from the buildings design to the site features design and added additional detail. And when I say we, Ben did all the work. And then we added an accessory structure design provision if you're building an accessory structure in front of your main building. It doesn't need to be the same level of detail, but it just has to be the same quality of material. So you wouldn't be able to slap a junior barn in your front yard. It would have to be behind your house. Or you could put really fancy siding on it. And this example, I love. They did such a good job with their accessory structures. They killed it. Okay. Done with that, on to vehicle parking. We added 2 new exemptions, one that's required by state law And the other one, I think is kind of required by state law. If I'm reading it right, basically, if somebody's now putting in outdoor dining, we're just going to let them do that, even if it takes out a required parking space. CRTP asks that we just eliminate all parking requirements altogether.
I had an idea about this, but I'll let somebody else go first.
Oh, well, okay. I was just going to say that I appreciated that staff really took the time to think through all of those comments and responses and then share that with us. And I agree with, what you said, Director Kenyon, about that might be a more significant change than what we're doing now. It's maybe something that the council should weigh in on. But I would be personally excited to see that conversation happen and would be supportive of that. So just wanted to put my 2 cents in on that, but I agree this is probably not the time.
Oh, and I also agree, I think, in your exchange with CRTP about not really being advertised to the public in terms of the code changes we were doing, like the overall kind of, I think it's appropriate. That's something that would need to be better disclosed, not just kind of bundled with a bunch of other stuff, even though it's all over the map. But just a thought, I don't expect this to be integrated, but as we start approaching this conversation about eliminating parking requirements, maybe a phased approach to where we sort of do some horse trading with, like, let's say a development generates under the current prescriptive standards the need for 10 parking spaces, In lieu of doing the 10 parking spaces, they provide parking for a different mode of transportation, like a bicycle.
We have that.
You got that?
Yeah, we have 15 reductions and like 50 exemptions. So we're basically not requiring parking. I never tell people they need parking. I'm like, okay, you're likely exempt. And if not exempt, I can reduce you down. And that's where we start.
Do 0 spaces.
You can get down to
providing-
0
Okay.
pretty easily under our code. It's a fake sense of needing parking to be fully
vehicular Trojan
transparent
horse.
about it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's good to hear. And because it can be a barrier to development and a barrier to business, although sometimes businesses want the parking, so it's a bit complex. But it's good to hear that there's support for people wanting to explore that.
More bike lockers.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Parking access. Here's where I stepped on engineering's toes and started to deal with their standards about driveways. I got this image from the ARP website. They're like really killing it on their bike ped stuff now, which I get. But anyway, so we already have this standard that you only get one driveway for lots less than 100 feet wide in residential zoning districts, but we didn't have a numerical limitation for mixed use. So we added that 250 feet. And then driveway maximum size, because we have some epically long driveways in Eureka. And some people want long driveways so that nobody can park in front of their house, which I think is funny. But, and then driveway distance from street corner. We want buildings, framing our street corners. And we now have a state law that you can't park within 20 feet of a street corner. So we're trying to either build a building there or daylight it, basically. And there's an administrative adjustment that you can get out of any of these if you have circulation concerns. So there could be a use, like, for instance, this auto-oriented use. It might make sense for them to have additional driveway so you could get in and out circulation-wise.
And for this administrative adjustment, is it like a finding that's made in tandem with like the city engineer or?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll check it. But it should say with city. Whenever it's engineering related, I try to put that in there.
Yeah, cool. I'm sure they would appreciate it.
We already have this great parking placement standard, but if you already have development on a site, we don't really have a trigger right now for redesigning your site. it's a major thing to have to move your building. But if you are going to be redeveloping your building, we want you to move it so that you're not. So we're getting rid of like buildings behind a sea of parking and moving them in the front. These are new standards. We have a lot of places in Eureka where it's one parcel, but they have multiple parking areas with their own driveways. So this standard says internally connect those parking areas so that they can all share a driveway to the street. Do you have a question, Commissioner Kraft? And then we don't have any standards for loading and service areas currently, so we added one about using the alley or the side street. I'm realizing this might be an issue because it says you can use the side street, but then it's not allowed on a public facing building facade.
I mean, is that a street or is it a driveway? It's a street.
I think it was a street. I believe we vacated it.
Ah, okay.
It's a driveway now, yeah. But I'm not 100% sure on that.
I don't think anyone's 100% sure, actually, but I did wonder.
I was wondering how this particular one would be affected by the standard, and I couldn't figure it out.
As long as I can get in to those two stores, they're critical.
Vehicle parking. Oh yeah, we have an allowance for ribbon driveways. Right now it's only for single family homes. We're saying like any driveway serving an individual unit could be a ribbon driveway, meaning you have landscaping in between where your wheels are. It looks nice. We right now have a requirement that your parking lot needs perimeter landscaping that is 3 feet tall. And then we have also a standard that you need a perimeter wall that's 3 feet tall. And a lot of applicants are like, why do I need both? Let me just put in a wall. And we're like, well, you're right. But let's make it the landscaping that you have to put in, not the wall. So we took the wall out. Also, we got complaints that that's bad for people could hide and attack you. What's the word? Septed.
Lying
Ambush.
wait.
I'm wondering though, for parking lots like that middle picture, it does force pedestrians to use the driveway to get in and out. So is there not a standard to have some kind of pedestrian walkway coming out of a parking lot where you don't have to use the driveway?
We do have a standard for a pedestrian. Can you find that existing standard, Caitlin? This parking lot is one of the ones that this landscaping was triggered by non-cons. So we have this, they came in to redevelop that building, and that triggered them having to upgrade this parking lot that had no landscaping and add the exterior landscaping to it. I wonder if our pedestrian circulation in parking lot standard, it doesn't need to be, that's not one of the standards we have that you have to do when you upgrade, and maybe it should be.
I feel like you should be. Just walking through the driveways can be just kind of dangerous. I think it might be something to consider. And they could easily put a walkway through there to make it so you had safer access out of the parking lot.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the standard right now, and it doesn't say anything about having to connect that pedestrian walkway to the adjacent sidewalk, so that might be worth adding.
Great.
Yeah, our existing code says parking lots with more than 30 parking spaces must include a pedestrian walkway outside of drive aisles. Only one walkway is required to serve the entire parking lot. Walkways for each parking row within the lot are not required.
So it's kind of, we could buff that standard up.
It's kind of weak.
Surprised that ADA wouldn't require a path of travel.
ADA does require a path of travel from the ADA parking spots to the building entrance.
Yeah, so this
Off the sidewalk into the building entrance. sense. Like, you know, I guess it wouldn't be going through the parking lot, but yeah, there's sort of a disconnect there. Yeah.
In this image, though, there is that ADA parking spot, and you can't see it because there's a bush, but there is a little walkway connecting to the sidewalk.
Right.
Because of building code standards. And then we are removing a prohibition on large vehicle parking in front and exterior side setbacks to allow people to park their boats and RVs in their driveways.
Is this just in their driveways or in front of their houses on the street?
Not on the street. Because you're not allowed to park a vehicle for an extended period of time on the street.
Right.
But the argument that sold me on getting rid of this was like, people were like, we're an outdoor community and we have boats and we want to park them. And this picture is really funny. In Seaside, this person was told they had to screen their boat. And so their neighbor drew a picture of a boat on the fence. We also, bicycle parking. Now we added some surfacing, lighting, and maintenance requirements. We sometimes, we have a lot of these buildings that build to the property line in our downtown, Old Town area, and they don't have space on their property for the bike parking in front of the, entrance. And some places we have a very wide sidewalk, like 12 feet, and we could accommodate bike parking. And so in those instances, we would allow an administrative adjustment if a bunch of criteria are met to put your short-term bike parking on the street, on the sidewalk. And then we added a standard for long-term bike parking that you can't have to use stairs to access it. And 20%, if there's 10 or more required, 20% would have to be e-bike ready. And then I hear CRTP about just, I guess it's the next slide, making sure there's some extra large spots for cargo bikes. We are going to be bringing the climate action plan to council in February. We have a significant mode shift goal. If we're gonna achieve it, people are gonna need cargo bikes to take to grocery stores. They're gonna need. So, I can see adding a requirement maybe for over a certain number of required bikes that you also have some bigger spaces. I totally support if they're doing their bikes vertically on walls, that they have some on the ground. I can't pick up my new EV bike, so selfishly this resonated with me.
And what does e-bike ready mean? Is that just charging or something else?
Yeah. And then he was a bit concerned about the reduced width of the aisles, and we can bump it back up to a 5-foot aisle. We were on the fence about that. We just really struggled. Can you explain?
Yeah. So it required like a 5-foot maneuvering behind you, and then 4 feet from parking spaces, drive aisles, landscaping, sidewalks. Then it was 2 feet between each parking space. And then you had to have an ability to secure the bike in 2 places, right? And so what was happening is each space is supposed to be 2x6, but you would take that round U bike rack, and they would place it only 2 feet apart from each other. And then sometimes it would be really close to a wall. It was just really hard. Like the standards were really hard to get them to fit in some areas. And
to interpret, not only for staff, but no applicant was submitting plans that were correct.
Yes, and the interpretation. So yeah, having this figure we came up with to help explain it, and just tried to simplify it, because it also, our code talked about long-term versus short-term, and then some of the standards are like, does it apply to long-term or only to short-term? It just wasn't clear.
it's not like vehicle parking where you each get your own little cubby, you know. Bike parking, like they overlap. It's confusing and hard, and nobody's doing a good job of it. So we couldn't just like find a good code to steal from. Okay, number of spaces. Currently, we only have bike parking requirements for multifamily and commercial uses. We're now proposing to require it as broadly as we require vehicle parking. We added a minimum of 2 space requirement, which is huge. So everybody has to provide long and short term bike parking at 2 spaces at a minimum, no matter how small you are. That's kind of big.
But really, the 2 spaces can be covered by 1 bicycle rack, 1 U-rack.
True.
And everybody is multifamily and commercial.
Everybody being broader than that. It's
So who's everybody?
civic, utility, industrial.
Everybody but single family?
Yeah.
Okay.
And long term can't be it has to be enclosed. It has to be covered, right?
Long term has to be covered, but we allow you to just have like extra space in your garage. We're not super picky about how that covering happens.
Right.
For like a utility use, what's an example of a project in that use type that would require a parking standard?
Like we're talking to PG&E about the lovely idea of them like taking over Brainerd for a courtyard and offices, and they could that's right on the trail, and they might have employees that want to bike and want a place to park their bike.
So that's kind of an office use too, though. I guess I'm thinking like, would a utility use be like a cell tower?
Cell
like
tower, it
something
says
else?
none required. We put that in the table.
Great. Yeah. Because I mean, it seems like some of these utility uses might not actually have people going to them, you know? It's
Right. And we have an admin adjustment you can get if you can demonstrate that you just don't have customers or employees or.
Yeah. Perfect.
This also codifies for like vacation rentals. You know, right now, the minor use permit process, now we can get them to add a bicycle parking space, which really can be in a garage or just somewhere that's not affecting ingress, egress, and it's covered and it can be secured. But there's commercial lodging in the mixed use zones, right, which is a single family home. They don't have to do it. So now everyone will have to do it without a discretionary permit.
And right now we have a cap at 15 parking spaces. So no matter how big you are, you only have to provide 15, and it's not clear if it's how many minimum, long or short term. So we got rid of that. So the biggest thing I think that's different is that right now commercial uses really don't have to provide long-term spaces. It's 1 per 20 car parking spaces for uses 10,000 square feet or greater. And I know CRTP was not happy with linking bike parking to how much car parking you have. And so now it's 0.2 per 1,000 square feet of floor area, but a minimum of 2. And you were CC'd. We have this whole table of examples. This is the most, creating this table was so stressful because I've listened to so many presentations about how arbitrary vehicle parking standards are, and I felt like I was recreating that, but for bike parking. But I don't know a way to do it better. But we do have the ability to update this code regularly, and we plan on doing that. So, but I get Collins. We do require, if you don't think about our reductions and exemptions, we do require 1 vehicle parking space per residential unit. So I'm open to the 1 long-term space per unit. Seattle and Portland are doing it, but it's up to you all.
I think that's a great idea.
All right.
1 long-term bike per unit.
Which wouldn't need to be a garage per se. It could be
No, it could literally be one of those little bike lockers.
I mean, as someone who does bicycle around, it makes a huge difference. And also when it comes to like where you travel to, if you're going to work, I mean, parking on Fifth Street in front of the courthouse, you know, is not an attractive option for people, you know, but parking inside of an enclosed area is the difference maker. So those types of things make a huge difference. And, you know, I have in my house, you know, a place where I can put my bike, but it's a total pain in the butt, you know, to get it in and out, and I have to go up steps, and it does make me not want to ride as much, you know. So those types of little things have a, you know, profound effect on people's habits.
Yeah, let's incentivize bike riding.
Okay. I'm down to make that change. And then moving on from bike and vehicle
Oh,
parking.
just an idea, just not that we have to do anything about it, but in Amsterdam they have a bike barge. And I was just thinking, like, if we ever have the problem of parking for bicycles downtown, say one day, you know, that might be something we could also, you know, think about as a way to, like a parking garage, but not really.
I wonder what the Coastal Commission would feel about that.
Yeah.
I want the bike barge to be near the Ferris wheel.
All right.
We'll put it on our vision board.
Okay.
Noticing there's a new state law that we have to notice 20 days in advance instead of 10 when it's a zoning amendment that affects the permitted use of real property. So I'm already gearing up for your public hearing on the zoning code update. I have to notice it ASAP in the time standard. Infill incentive permit qualifying benefits. Okay, so this is a deviation. You're allowed to deviate from certain code standards if you provide 2 of this list of benefit options that are all community benefits. So we added, we strengthened the EV charger benefit because we had to, because the building code now requires more. And so and then we added one, we have one for LEED certification, but we want to incentivize just like all electric construction in general. So we added that. We added enhanced bicycle parking beyond the requirements. And then we added end of trip facilities. So showers at your work and shared driveways. We want to give you credit for working with your neighbor to share a driveway. And then we have this issue sometimes with our appeal period because it's calendar days. And so sometimes it ends when City Hall is closed and we just extend it. But we wanted, because it's such a legal thing, appeals, we wanted to just clarify that. And then nonconformities. I know this isn't a sexy topic, but this is actually the most important part of our zoning code because we're a city that's developed. And so when coming up to current code standards is triggered is huge for us. Like this is the most important part of our whole code, nonconformities. So right now we have this trigger that if you come in for a building permit over a certain amount of money, valuation, you have to do all these site feature upgrades because our 2019 code requires all these things like landscaping in your parking lot. And people always push back on it. And I get it because they also have ADA upgrades they have to make, and they have PIRs from Public Works about, fixing up their sidewalk, and it all adds up. And so we wanted to have a 10%, wanted to establish a valuation threshold. So if you come in for a $100,000 project, you have to hit this valuation. And once you do, you can be done. Even if you haven't actually upgraded all of the stuff. And if you come in for $1 million project, then it's harder for you to hit your cap, And I don't know about this 10%. I just picked it because that's the cap that's in the building code for ADA upgrades. But they would both be applied. So we're talking about 20% of your valuation on upgrades.
10 for ADA and 10 for landscaping and such.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you hit the cap. So I don't know. I don't know about this one, but we can revisit it too when we update the code again. We can.
Was there any feedback from the development community on this one specifically?
No.
I mean, it
but I
seems-
haven't like called it out really.
Yeah, it seems like I think your thought process makes sense. And it seems to me like maybe if it becomes too onerous, we can revisit it like we have for landscaping. You know, I'm comfortable with it.
And then we wanted to exempt fire damage repair from the upgrade requirements because they're suffering enough already. And then some of the upgrade triggers, we have these rules of thumb that we just wanted to codify. And one of the things that happens is people always push back that they don't have room for the perimeter landscaping. But if you look at our minimum standards, like this parking lot's 68 feet wide. You only need a 22-foot drive aisle and 18-foot wide parking spaces. They have 10 extra feet to play with. And then maybe they don't need parking at all because there's no required parking here. And so we want to push them to add the landscaping because it does a lot for how we look as a city.
That's also a great example of why a pedestrian outlet would be really nice through that.
Yeah.
I have a question about exempting fire damage. Would it make sense to include earthquake and flood, other kind of natural disaster kind of stuff?
Yep. That's a good point.
I mean, damage by casualty is the term.
That we have it. We put it in our. We put something in our Gulch Greenway ordinance or something. I'll find it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I struggled a little bit with this one. I'll be honest. I was surprised by I'm glad to hear that the fire damage and other types of casualties would be given a pass, because I think that is a special case. The non-conforming use, extinguishing a non-conforming use seemed pretty short. I know you're raising it from currently 6 months of it being suspended and it's expiring. Is that
I did that for you because you brought this up before and you were like, it should be a year. That's why I changed it to a year, Steve. What do you want?
2 years of the county. That's why I was just like,
I'll change it to 2 years.
I think
us
it's
all.
1 year in Arcata,
Ugh.
just for reference. But yeah, I mean, it
it's
does
a
trip
major
people up
improvement.
sometimes.
I don't want to take. I buried the lead there, but that is a huge doubling of the time period. I mean, can you think of any substantial examples of uses being extinguished during your tenure?
And I do not want to extinguish uses because certain buildings are designed for certain uses and then those uses are no longer allowed. And I'd rather that building be occupied. So the Time Standard building has this whole windowless area because it was where they would, and now you can't do that type of use there. And somebody came in for like a bottling and distribution, and it had been over 6 months, but I blamed COVID and did some weird determination to let them in there. But I'm like, that building, it's never, unless they redevelop it or add windows, which is expensive.
Is like the old print shop area?
Yeah.
I mean, it might be good to have something like, instead of it being like so granular that a use is abandoned or suspended, that like if the building in which a series of non-conforming uses occur is continuously occupied, if occupancy isn't suspended for more than a year or whatever the magic number is, that all of the suite of uses are preserved, not just the ones that are being utilized, so that you don't really disqualify, you don't start
I see what
carving
you're
off.
saying.
Because I think
It's not the tenant space, it's the overall lot.
Yeah, because it's we want to reward people for keeping buildings in operation, however they can find a new adaptation of them, without, and preserve that, historical, like you said, they're designed for that use, at least the last incarnation of it. So yeah, I mean, I tend to fall in the very sympathetic to not losing those, even though I know it's like a fundamental goal of us, like in terms of redeveloping the city into like what we want to see there. if you allow people to hold on to these things that are not really the idealized land use activity, you're stymieing the ability to do that. But
You're articulating my whole, like, this is the question of everything I do. It's like the trade-off, right? Like, you want to push Eureka to be nicer, but you want to occupy the buildings and have economic activity and not stifle that.
well, if
And you
you'll-
want like that creative adaptation and evolution
Right.
over time.
I
I'm
mean,
becoming like, yeah, more and more scared of rules and wanting less of them. The longer I go, I'm like, what is the? Maybe we shouldn't have any zoning. Maybe we should just allow anything everywhere.
I mean, if folks will indulge me, I had a friend, I worked in Lake County as a land use planner where I started, and one of my friends, after I moved up here to take my job in Humboldt, he stuck around. He worked for the city of Calistoga, and they had a sewer issue where they didn't have very many connections that they could offer up for development. So development essentially had a very, it was highly restricted, to the point where maybe they gave out 2 new connections a year or something like that. So every year they would parade proposals in front of the city council, and whatever was the most attractive proposal got the magic connection. And people go, I'll throw in affordable housing, I'll put in a bus stop, like it was like developers.
Yeah, we don't have that here.
If we had that kind of a climate, I could see us being like, yeah, screw your non-conforming use, like we don't want to see that anymore, but we don't. We have like vacant real estate. We have a lot of, need for redevelopment and reinvestment,
Yes.
So I think, it's appropriate at this juncture to be pretty forgiving when it comes to that. Okay, thanks for indulging me. I think 1 year is good. It's better than what we had. I'm not going to, and it's consistent with other jurisdictions. So.
Okay.
You're kind of convinced. You're making a very compelling argument for 2 years. Though.
Yeah.
That was compelling. So I mean, I don't know. I would back you up if you wanted to go that route.
We talked about this already, but we added the 75% redevelopment trigger for parking placement and access standards, and for the large site development standards requiring the mid-block connection. And then right now, there's this standard that if you have a non-conforming building, you just can't exacerbate or increase the non-conformity. So, for instance, if you have fewer windows than 65% transparency, that's fine. You just can't take out even more windows, right? Somebody came in and they wanted to build more single-story building in a zoning district that has a 2-story minimum, and I felt like saying no to them was counter to the point of the 2-story minimum, which is to like get people to build more square footage. So we wanted to put in a carve out there that didn't count. If you're expanding your single-story building, that doesn't count as an increase or exacerbation of the nonconformity with the minimum 2-story standard. All right, Ben, that's it on design stuff. I'm sorry I made you sit through all of that. You gave me emotional support.
No. All right. Well, that's good. All right. Thanks.
Thanks,
I'll
Ben.
sign
Have a
off
good
then.
night.
You too. Bye.
All right. Accessory dwelling units. We just made some updates required by state law. HCD was like, you have to update yours this year. And so we went through all that trouble and paid thousands of dollars to do that update that I just brought to you. And then the state changed the law again. So thank you, HCD, for that. But that's okay. We just can roll it into this update. And
Before we move on, I noticed one thing with that. What was the reference to? It was like internal area versus square footage or something like that, like a change in the.
Yeah, they took out. So now it's based the size limits are based on livable space.
Livable space. That's it. Yeah. So that's to match interior living space instead of floor areas to match the new state law.
Yes.
Okay. Just checking. Okay.
Wireless is our last topic, and then we're done. Are you guys ready for this? Buckle up. Okay. Last time we updated our wireless standards was in 2010. So there's a bunch of federal Wireless Telecommunication Act stuff that we had to incorporate. There's all this case law that we basically cannot, we have to allow a cell tower if it closes a gap in the service coverage of a particular provider. We can't say, don't worry, AT&T has that covered. If Verizon doesn't, they get to cover it. And so we had to create this special exception that allows them to deviate from any standard if they can demonstrate that it's necessary to deviate from that standard to, and this is all based on federal law and case law. There's also these shot clock timelines for how fast you have to permit different types of wireless facilities that we just referenced because it changes and we don't want to put it in there and then it changes. And then that's why we also added that the appeal doesn't come to you guys. It just goes directly to city council, because of the same with ADU building permits. And then now with 5G, cell towers aren't as much of a thing anymore. Their small cell facilities are what gives us cell service, and they're put on utility poles and in roof parapets and things. And so, and there's federal law about small cells you can establish standards for, but they have to be objective and you approve it administratively. Eligible facility requests, they have this, if you modify an existing facility and it's not a substantial modification, which is, they have this whole thing, like not increasing it by 20 feet or more than 20 feet. They're very, like their definitions are, it's like night and day with the Coastal Commission as to what they consider substantial. But anyway, you have to approve those without any standards. If they meet the federal standards. So the code update is to allow these with a zoning clearance. We want to get rid of the separate wireless facility permit for the same reason, so that you don't have to do two permits, one for your building permit and one for your wireless permit. You can just apply for a building permit. We do a zoning clearance. Currently, you need design review and either the wireless permit or a conditional use permit. We're getting rid of the need for design review because if you look at the design review standards, they're like, does it create a pedestrian environment? Is your architecture consistent? It's like those standards don't work. The use permit standards actually are really applicable to cell towers. So it makes sense to use the use permit provisions. And so small cell and eligible facilities requests would get a zoning clearance. A use permit would be required for all new freestanding facilities. Right now, it's just if you're in a residential zone or a historic district or within 100 feet of that. Now it would be anywhere if it's a new freestanding facility, not attached to a building or a pole, and minor use permit everywhere else. And there's extra findings if you're in a residential zone or a historic district or on a historic property on our local register. We added that. You have to demonstrate that it can't go anywhere else and solve your service needs. We kept the requirement for a neighborhood meeting for projects that trigger a CUP, conditional use permit. And there's an existing provision that you have to notice within 500 feet if you have a certain height of a tower. I think it's 60 feet. We kept that. And then the standards are organized by general and then one specific to freestanding, building mounted, and in the right of way. Those all have their own standards. And then we have operation and maintenance standards. Transfer of permit ownership, they have to notice the city because these things are hard to track down who owns what with these, and they're usually on a third party's property. Abandonment and removal standards, and then a provision that if we want to mess with our right of way and they have a facility there, we have the right to tell them they have to move. There's a lot of we have a lot of good standards that we just kept. And I won't go over them because I can see you guys are getting tired. And concealment, this is a big difference. Right now you have to conceal if you're in a residential or historic district, And that is the same now, but what we want is different. Before we said camouflage or of an innovative design, and now we're saying that we don't like reliance on artificial novelty or false representations of trees, architectural features, and other unrelated forms that result in visual incongruity or draw undue attention to the facility. So the idea is like, we don't notice all of the power poles everywhere, or at least I don't. And I think a lattice tower can just like blend into its environment, maybe more than a palm tree that is not a palm tree. That's my opinion.
Would you say the one on Harris at the church that was highly controversial and looks like the second one in from the left there, is that a good example? Is that an example of one that is innovative and not a false representation, or is it a false representation that is
I think if it's at a church and they're like inhabiting a cross that existed before,
No, there wasn't one before. It fools a lot of people. So to me, that's
Yeah.
one that, like, you know.
Same with the flagpoles. People don't notice that as much. I don't know.
I think it's a pretty good example to me of an innovative artificial element, you know, that actually.
What do you think about the fake water towers?
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Well, that one is particularly not pretty.
Yeah, it's very unattractive.
If it had a mural on it or something like that, you know, I
Yeah.
was just saying, we were sidebarring about that. We added one of those micro towers to the
Yeah, our
water
water tower. Yeah, and in that case, it's like it is a water tower. Now it just has a cell facility on it. That's what I was thinking. Like, we do have some prominent features that would be prominent features regardless. And you just
Yeah, I mean, putting stuff on top of the steeple at St. Bernard's or on the water tower, those would be examples to me of stealth installations, not.
I could see how this would be kind of a tricky one to write. What about if a case like at the church that Commissioner Lazar was just talking about, they did a public meeting, people like wanted it camouflaged in some way? Like, would there be a process?
all of these would need a conditional use permit, so we can write super subjective discretionary standards.
I know there was a code, and that was those towers were actually outside of the code, and there was talk about forcing them to do something else with them, but never happened. They still sit there standing out like a sore thumb. Was that not the case?
Are we talking about the building by I?
Yes.
I have a picture of that.
Oh yeah, the radomes.
Wait, where did I put that?
Yeah, those
That's- yeah, atomic
they
burns.
did go through a conditional
one.
use permit process, but then once you get it, you're the eligible facility and you can do co-location, and that's how it probably got the way that it did after initial permitting.
Yeah, that's just flat ugly.
Well, it was
to use the
definitely
technical
incremental
term.
because I work right across the street, and there was one, and there was two, and then there was three, and then I was like, "Whoa, there's a lot."
I
Of
had actually thought we went down a path that they were like not, they weren't permitted to be like that, but
I will
they
research.
are like that.
I will
and-
research this question.
and it didn't get followed up on for them to rectify
I know.
that.
I know we've gone down this rabbit hole of research before, and I'll find it and figure this out.
Yeah, I did a pre on it. Pretty sure I gathered everything, and they did go to city council and they got approved.
And then
And-
I'll
But I
think
think
through
the
it with Ben to
approved
make
design
sure what we've
wasn't
written
that.
now will prevent this.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we don't have to go
Yeah,
down
we'll
this,
look
but
into
I
it.
do. Every time I see him, I always wonder, like, is there going to be follow up on that?
Well,
Part of it is our standards, though, that it looks like this because they're limited to 60 feet, and that's why they have 4. If we let them have 100 feet, they would only need 1, or 120 feet.
yeah, and we know that because this property owner who's managing it, they did contact us last year, and we did go to the design review committee for feedback on designs because they wanted to go to 120 feet, which would have required changing the code anyways to allow that, and that really would have met their needs. But then without having to do the code change, they were going to go for 2 80-foot tall because that was the max you could get with. Once you get permitted, like these eligible facilities automatically allow like a 10-foot or 10% increase. I mean, that's how these places change once they initially get permitted.
which we've learned. So now when we permit, we think about how it could be enlarged. Okay. I will think through concealment more. Changes to height. The height limits are pretty similar to what we have now that we're proposing. The difference is that for building mounted, right now there's a cap at 25 feet above the height of the building, and we're changing it that it can extend 12 feet above the roof, even if that exceeds the height limit. But then we're also adding administrative adjustments or maybe they're just exceptions, to allow for better service and more co-location, because there's a trade-off with tall towers. One tall tower might allow us to avoid 4 shorter towers.
Yeah, and I did want to clarify. I learned a lot from this inquiry from their attorney about how everyone is very afraid of the EMFs, if I'm saying that correctly. But the taller the tower, the less likely the EMFs are going to hit the ground. So there's this perception of people in the community that the taller it's worse, when really the 5G closer to the ground, or you have more radioactive emissions. I'm sorry, I'm calling it wrong. EMFs being
Electromagnetic. That's it. Oh, sorry. That's it. We're done. Thank you for sticking that out with me. I know that was a lot.
I don't want to torture my colleagues, but I did have some thoughts on the wireless, so I didn't want to interject. And it's nothing profound, but okay. So when I looked through them, I didn't see a section which would be like codification, which is unusual, I'll admit, of application requirements.
We took that out because in our updated code, we do not put in application requirements.
What about a placeholder where we say we will maintain on our website a list of standard applications?
We do. We refer them. We have a placeholder that refers them back to the permit procedures in 408. And in that section, we say we can require whatever we want.
Well, but you really can't under the Spectrum Act. You have to make, like, I'm no attorney.
I already know what our list of application requirements are going to be, but we're not, our code does not have application requirements in it.
And that's okay, but I want to be clear. My read of it, just from dealing with cell tower stuff for a long time now, you know, the cellular industry has done a really good job of getting the FCC to help them bring about new wireless facilities with the least amount of headwinds as possible. And so they're dismantling, much like HCD's dismantling barriers to housing, they're dismantling barriers to new towers being developed. And one of the ways they do that is shot clocks. Another way they do it is by saying, if you don't have objective standards in your code, then you can't apply them to our project. If they're subjective or if they're not codified, out the window, and then EMI is out the window. The MP, E limits are set by the FCC, so that's off the table. So the only thing that really is left for local jurisdictions is, how does the site stack up against potential alternative sites? That, when we have a use permit that's heading forward, is the centerpiece of debate. So that's the part of an application that needs to be the most robust.
So we did put in the findings for approval.
I saw it.
If it's a discouraged location or if it's a special exception,
But
they
I
have
don't
to
think it's
demonstrate
enough.
it through an
through a
alternative.
detailed alternatives analysis. I mean, you could drive a bus through that. I mean, to me, I think that's the part that, in my opinion, would be, it doesn't have to be in the code, like you're saying. It's going to be directing to a website or something, standard application requirements. But that's the part that needs to be highly detailed and really explicit about all the things that need to be there. Because, so for instance, like just saying, yeah, we contacted this landowner, they weren't.
No, yeah, I plan on the application having really detailed standards for an alternatives analysis.
Yeah, like you would in like a tabular format where you'd have all these different variables, like this one, had power nearby but would require, building a whole new structure, and the total project cost was X, so that the decision makers and the public can really see kind of what was driving the choice of the preferred site.
Yeah.
know? And then they can, and did it achieve the coverage objectives, and how well did it achieve the coverage objectives?
Right, because it's
80%?
like, is it strong or weak?
Yeah,
or
they could be like, didn't achieve it, and it's like there's nothing quantifying, So that's where I'm saying, like, even if it doesn't, I agree it doesn't belong in our code, but if it's not in our code, I mean, the way that I read the Spectrum Act, it's very easily for them to kind of go, well, I don't see it anywhere, so you can't ask me for
Right.
it, So I think at least foreshadowing in the language of the code that, like, key features of an alternatives analysis, even if it's not like super explicit, I would encourage you to think about ways to kind of bake that in, because the more we do that, the more we have pushback when they don't want to give us that thing and really show their cards as to how they arrived at the choice that everybody hates, and so that's the thing from my experience that really gets, puts decision makers in a tough spot.
So in 408, its basis of determination, the department's completeness determination is based on the department's list of required application content. So I think I'll ask our lawyer, but I think if we have, this is the required content and we have it published and
I mean, it's work for the
adopted.
county. It's just, if they really.
But you've inspired me to like really flesh out the alternatives analysis requirement.
Because arguably, if you adopted the code and you didn't have it on your website and they submit an application tomorrow,
yeah.
they can go, well, it didn't say that when we submitted it.
Yeah.
So-
I just think we can adopt the application requirements separate from our code.
Absolutely. And to the extent you leave any breadcrumbs in, the section here, I'm looking at Tier 2 and Tier 3 use permits through a detailed alternatives analysis that there are no available and technically feasible alternative locations preferred by the city that would meet the provider's service objectives, based on information, a detailed, and provided by the applicant, whatever, something that kind of gets to the heart of what we're expecting as an application requirement. I don't know, something like that. I'm not trying to orate it, but you got the general gist of it. I did have one other thing, and it's a short one. It's about the, we didn't seem to go, if we did, I missed it. And it's not wireless. It's the.
Yeah, I read a lot of wireless.
No, it's fine.
Sections, and they have very detailed application requirements, and I bookmarked all of them for when I do write the application.
And if you put in your code, I mean, we do get our code updated pretty regularly, and I'm impressed by that. I think that, putting it in a checklist online is okay too. Okay,
I think we did come up against that too when they added it to the water tower, because we couldn't find an alternative site. And so it kind of forced our hand that we really couldn't have denied it. We had to approve it. So
yeah,
and they really they do it out of both. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. This one's not good for this reason. This one's not good for this reason. But they contradict each other. They're just really manipulative, unfortunately. The section. So this is not wireless. This is the post-approval provisions, the building permit application. So this is 155.420.050. If a project requires a discretionary permit, the building department may not accept a building permit application until after the effective date of the discretionary permit approval.
Yes.
So I understand it. I guess I'm just, why now? What's driving this?
Arguments with applicants. Yeah. So I wanted something in the code to point to.
Are you finding that they're trying to get in to avoid code cycle updates?
We allow them to get in to avoid code cycle. It's more, it'll be less of a problem with design review, honestly, going away. But they're already ready for building permits and applying, and their design is, hasn't been approved yet.
And then they get mad at us for having to go to design review, and then they have to change things when they paid someone to do building permit plans.
Oh, you know what I put it in here for? It was because it allows us to incomplete a building permit that needs a deviation from code standards. And it's clear that we can hold the building. There's no permit streamlining or post-approval streamlining. It's an incomplete building permit application. If they need, we say, hey, you're not complying with the standard, you need an admin adjustment or a minor modification, we're in completing your building permit. And our review clock stops until you come in and apply for that discretionary adjustment and get it approved. So this was a Permit Streamlining Act strategy to clearly incomplete building permits that need a code deviation and need to go through a discretionary process to get that approved before we can then approve their building permit.
But I mean, does the Permit Streamlining Act really apply to ministerial permits?
No, it doesn't, but there is a new state law that does for housing projects and has clock timelines, timeframes for building permit approved. That's the new realm of state law, is they've done everything they can
Taking
to
a page
like
out of
affect
the cellular playbook. I mean, there's
so now there's more and more laws about building permits and how, because some cities just like kill projects within the building permit stage. We don't. We are really fast comparatively, but there is always this give and take about who's got the monkey on their back. And we wanted to be clear in the code that the ball's in your court, not ours. Our clock has stopped. Your clock has started.
But I mean, this code says try again, like when your discretionary permit's effective.
I'm still going to let them apply for their building permit ahead of. It's just here so I can point to it if I need to. But I'm going to ignore it. And when it's.
I'll just say, the main thing that I felt like would be a unfortunate consequence of this is that getting your project to fruition when you have to thread all these different needles as a developer, you have to go through discretionary review, you got to get a building permit in compliance with the building code, you got to hire a contractor, you got to get the materials, all those things. There's all these, hoops and things you got to, and anything that you can do to kind of like knock out, the procession, even though it's the wrong order of operations.
Then what is a discretionary permit if it's
No,
that you're
it's
just saying it's
inappropriate.
meaningless. You're saying it's a procedural thing and we shouldn't
Yeah,
even
it's a
bother
foregone
with
conclusion.
it.
It's not.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it sound like that. But to the extent that there are things that are non-discretionary about your project that maybe if, you're confident in, are going to be necessary elements that won't be changed by it just gives people.
I'm going to let them apply for their building permit early.
Obviously, you're
I'm
not
just
going to
point to this if they're difficult with me.
Yeah. And I honestly, the shot clock provisions are not going to go away. They're going to only get more different types of projects that can invoke that. So that in and of itself is enough to make me not want to push back too hard on this because, we got to be able to say, no, this isn't ready for submittal. You need something. So thank you for indulging me. I took note of that and I was like, that's pretty extreme.
Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable to put that in there too. I get it. But that was I knew I had a reason.
There you go.
Not to add extra time, but where are we in the process of getting the coastal zoning completed?
I stopped for all these other code updates that. The good thing, though, is that all this stuff we just did with the inland code, we're just going to copy into the coastal code. So once we adopt this, hopefully in March, and Arcata's going to adopt their comprehensive coastal zoning code update in March, which was written by Ben Noble and looks just like our inland code. And I have the Coastal Commission's comments on it. So I'm going to piggyback hard off of Arcata and bust this out before I get caught up in our housing element update.
So when? Is it going to get done in 2026?
That's the goal. But I've told you that the last 3 years.
That's
so
what
there's no reason to believe me.
I know. Well, I just seem like so excited about the opportunity for new development. So that's just why I was asking. And when people ask, I'm like, I swear we've been working on it and it's coming out
the most important thing we could do for new development is updating our coastal zoning code. But this inland code update is going to save our planning department so much time. It's going to create so much more capacity. Getting rid of
if you
certain
think,
things.
if you think about how many design review appeals that you've had to act on.
Okay, well, it'd be
I'm
nice
really
to get
excited.
that done in 2026 for
Yes.
for real.
Yeah. Just I'm trying to hire a senior planner to work on the housing element so that doesn't. That's my only worry is that's going to like just take over. But my goal is to like carve out this space in 2026 to do the coastal code update.
And I'm working really hard to protect her time.
I'm sure you are. Thank you. Okay. Fair enough.
Putting that out there though, if anybody's like a housing advocate and wants to work on a plan that's going to dictate and set the vision for the next 8 years, there's a position for you.
Are you coming out of retirement, Commissioner Croft?
Unstated in that list was that you have to be smart. So I don't think I'm smart on this.
You're an expert.
All right. Good enough? Oh. Are you
You could open it up for public comment.
did you have some public comments you'd like to add in tonight? If so, you just need to step on up to this microphone here. Again, you don't have to. Oh, one moment.
I'm just a citizen of Eureka. One comment I have to make has to do with what just happened here. Okay. I know that you were at the meeting that Katie Moulton put together, and so was I, with Robert Max and I were there. And something about that meeting was so much more hospitable than this situation is. So I just had that little comment. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, this is about parking, how it affects our projects. I know that you guys are familiar with the 5-unit project that Will Adams did on Booner Street, and you had a photo of it up there. A whole lot of things were affected by the fact that there was off-street parking required apparently for that project. So without that requirement, that building could have been put in the middle of that narrow lot and avoided all the ugliness that happened with people in the house next door. I was here for those meetings as well. The whole thing was unfortunate. So, and if that off-street parking hadn't been required, there could have been 4 more units in that building. It could have been in the middle of the lot. And the 5th garage could have been divided up among the units, among the people who were in the units with bicycle parking and storage for the units. But because they were required to have 5 units of 5 off-street parking places there, none of it could happen. And that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Fair enough. And I will speak to the hospitable part. We do want to be hospitable, but the way that these public hearings have to be, they don't allow for conversational opportunities, right? You get a chance to speak and then we get a chance to discuss it. But I would say as us, this particular set of commissioners, we do work really hard to make sure that we're writing those notes down and during our discussion that we address those. So I'm sorry that we can't be more hospitable and conversational, but it's just the way that these hearings are required to be set up.
Understood. It was a really great experience being at that meeting that Katie Moulton did, though. You felt so included through the whole thing. Thanks.
That's great to hear. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, with that, we shall adjourn.